All right, welcome everybody to the Senate Committee on Judiciary. We are going to be hearing SB 104 today, and we will start our meeting with the time-honored tradition of calling roll.
Senator Harris, Senator Orenthal, Senator Dondero Loop, Senator Wynn, Senator Hansen, Senator Krasner, Senator Stone, Chair Scheibel.
Here. I believe all of the senators who are not here yet are going to be joining us, so please mark them present when they arrive. And we will go ahead and open up the bill hearing on SB 104. And for the record, thank you for being here, Senator Wynn. Senator Wynn did provide us with a conceptual amendment that I believe was emailed to everybody. It is also available on the Nellis website as an exhibit for this meeting, so I'm sure that she'll be walking us through that as well. Wanted to make sure everybody had that, and if you have any questions or need it before we get started, just let me know.
Thank you. Rochelle Wynn, representing Senate District 3 for the record, and I'm very happy to be here presenting what I am going to call probably the first of many cleanup bills for Assembly Bill 116 from the 81st session, as well as Senate Bill 219 from the 81st legislative session. Just by way of a background, I know most of the people on this committee either voted for or voted against these two particular bills from the 81st session. But to give you a little update on it, there was a bill that had to do with the suspension of driver's license, and that was Senate Bill 219, brought by our Senate Majority Leader. In both houses, and as a combination, it had overwhelming bipartisan support and passed 51-12 between those two houses. And I had the privilege of carrying Assembly Bill 116 that also sought to decriminalize minor traffic matters, and that passed 58-2 out of both houses. And this is just some strictly cleanup. I know we want to make sure that this went into effect on January 1, 2023. So we are barely 2 months into what this looks like. And most of this is just cleanup. So we have had the opportunity, or I've had the opportunity to have a couple of different stakeholder meetings. And if you look at the bill language that is in the Senate Bill 104, this is just doing some inconsistencies. Senate Bill 219, it was inconsistent with 116, and that was never the intent. That was just the way it came out of drafting with the timing of things. And so this just puts it with the clear legislative intent that the driver's license relates to the provisions originally laid out in Senate Bill 219. And then if I can just draw your attention to the proposed conceptual amendments, these are some of the ones that we have had a lot of agreement on, and there are some that we are continuing to work on because we have come to our attention that there are potential issues with implementation of Assembly Bill 116. So if I can start with the first one, and there's no particular rhyme or reason to how these are indicated in there. They've just been brought to my attention over the past 18 months. So if we look at this, we have section 484A.7035, subsection 1, subsection C. It is the first bullet point here, and it is amending to add cellular phones. A lot of times there are jurisdictions that would like to include opt-in text message communications to remind people to pay their fines, to remind them if they have upcoming court appearances. And adding this to a traffic citation will allow them greater flexibility in communication and notice with people. And again, at this time, some of these jurisdictions are looking at opt-in opportunities for that kind of notice. The second section is just to amend to read the state registration number of the vehicle of the person driving. A lot of these were brought to us by members of law enforcement, as well as people issuing the tickets, as well as the courts that are trying to deal with them. Just for further clarification, they were kind of vague, and so this gives a little bit more clarity to those tickets. The second bullet point talks about allowing a person who does not contest a civil citation to request a reduction, a payment plan, or community service in lieu of the penalty. This was happening before, but we just didn't put that language to be as specific that once they converted from criminal citations to civil citations, that they would still, the courts would still have that flexibility to give people payment plans, give them the ability to offer community service or other options in lieu of that if their financial issues were in order. There was some cleanup language that is needed when to make sure that the fines and fees that are paid go to the jurisdiction where the offense occurred. So it's just cleanup language. For example, if you had a ticket, you were issued a ticket in the city of Reno, and you had a court appearance in the justice court, we want to make sure that the fines go to the jurisdiction where the citation actually occurred. With the next bullet point, this is some clarity that our prosecutors needed to be able to conform to the intent of the bill, that they could convert all of the things to civil and send them to collections after that date. So let's say you received a ticket, but your first court appearance was in 2023, but you received it in 2022. It allows them to seamlessly convert that over into a civil infraction, and it also allows them the ability to send that ticket to collections if you don't comply with the terms of that. Going down to the middle of the page, we're talking about NRS 484A.705. We just wanted to give some clarity. I know some of our law enforcement partners that were in the field, it was always our intent that if you were, for example, arrested, let's say you were pulled over for something that would be considered a civil citation, and when the officer came up to the car, they could smell alcohol or had other suspicion of other crime, that gives them the flexibility to still be able to arrest and charge those as like a criminal and keep it in one place. And then obviously the flexibility on the prosecutor on ultimately what they decided to charge and how they decided to charge those things. Everyone had the flexibility, so there was seamlessness. One of the important things that I believe that this body in implementing 116 is we wanted to make sure that our law enforcement officers that were in the field dealing with traffic matters and other crimes that may arise, that their job did not change and the investigation did not change for them, and this further allows for that intent. If we go to the next one, there are options for jurisdictions if they still want their prosecutors prosecuting the civil citations. And I know a lot of our municipal courts and a lot of our county courts still have district attorneys and city attorneys that are prosecuting the civil citations. And that also adds some things into law that they still have the same type of prosecutorial immunity that they would as if it was a criminal matter. And I think that's consistent also with the fact that there is flexibility with our prosecutors to be able to either turn something that is criminal in some respects into a civil citation in certain circumstances. And obviously, when someone is arrested on a criminal citation, along with like, say, a DUI, they can also turn that into a civil. So it just gives that more flexibility for the prosecution in that, and protections that come along with that. We also wanted to add some information. Right now, I think it's either cities or counties. They can do ordinances with civil penalties, or I think cities can do ordinances with civil penalties. So if there is a civil penalty, a civil infraction, traffic infraction that is needed, they have the ability to have corresponding civil ordinances for traffic in both the county and the city jurisdictions. So that's just bringing some parity there that doesn't exist. Probably one of the bigger portions that we will continue to work on is watching most of these jurisdictions work with law enforcement partners, work with courts, work with court administrators, work with clerks, working with everyone that's involved from the traffic. Is we do have a request that was brought to us from Amy Davey with Department of Public Safety, trying to come up with a way to have a universal citation. And we don't have a unified court system. So right now, everyone has their own ticket, and that would still be the case. So if the city of Sparks wanted to include different information on their ticket than Clark County or North Las Vegas wanted to do something different than Carson City, they still would have that ability to do that, but having a unified citation would make it easier. It's really a technical thing. It would be standard across the state. Brazos, which is like their system, can still partition the citation, so each jurisdiction still has a certain template, and they can collect additional information if they would like to. Like an example would be the opt-in on text notifications if one county wanted to do that and another city did not want to. But that is how that looks and how that works, and how much that costs might be something that we will be looking into to see how that works. I think it's very difficult. Well, the one thing that I learned with a project like this is it probably needed a project manager to help manage all of the courts across the state, since we don't have that. But I will say that they have done a fantastic job of coming together and trying to implement this as best as they can. So a lot of these suggestions came from those working groups that they put together, forcibly, naturally, I guess. But so I do appreciate all the things that they've done. So I know I've asked some of the jurisdictions to kind of go back to their partners and their courts and their judges to find out how they felt about the universal citation and what that might look like and how we might accomplish that. And I think ultimately, if we are able to do that, it will actually make this a lot easier. Let's see, going down to the next one. Also, amend language to allow the court availability of an online system and dispute resolution and instructions on how to provide that program. I think that just gives flexibility to the courts, again, on things like whether or not they want to be able to convert things to community service, if they want to have traffic school, if they want to provide for other safety mechanisms as a part of their civil penalty, that would be give them that flexibility. One of the things we haven't really been able to find some common ground on yet, but I know that we have a great team of people that want to find solutions, is how we set aside default judgments. So in a civil setting, because this is a civil citation, if you don't show up, it goes into default. And let's say a week later you realize, oh my gosh, I forgot about that traffic ticket. I want to go pay for it. Some of the courts don't really have a mechanism to go in and set aside that default judgment so you can take care of your responsibilities after the 90-day period. So we are trying to figure out whether or not there's enough flexibility in the rules to create their own system, whether or not we need a universal set of guidelines to make sure that there is a process. Right now, there are some courts that easily allow you to set forth the default judgment and come current on your fines or fees or make payment arrangements or do community service or do traffic school. And some of the courts read this as, we don't have an option, we immediately send it to collections. And so I think coming up with something, so we're still working on that. And just for full disclosure, because this just went into effect, I can imagine that other things might come down the pipeline in the next couple of weeks as people are implementing this. Finally, and I believe that some of the people have got together to try to figure out what it is. We don't have a lot of clarification on juvenile citations. Previously, there were systems in place where if a juvenile got a traffic citation, it was still criminal, but they had to come in with a parent or guardian to handle that ticket. And now we have to figure out how that works, whether or not we can impose civil judgments on juveniles, which I think that would probably it gives me pause. So I'm imagining it gives a lot of people on this panel pause. And yes, I'm looking at you, Senator Krasner. So I want to make sure that we're not in a situation where we're not we're having those extra protections for our juveniles, because I think that's a policy decision that we didn't really think about at the time, but it's obviously on the forefront. So I know we have some individual working groups trying to figure out what that language might look like and how we can defer that maybe over to the family court or get parental involvement. So I know that these are extremely conceptual in nature, but I did want to make sure that you had something before you to know that this is a very dynamic process, and that is kind of where it is. A lot of people asked whether or not we were going to add other things to decriminalize and make civil. That is not what this is doing at this point. I'm not saying that there might not be other individual bills that other members are bringing to add additional items on here. We did contemplate that, but I think the committee in bringing this bill forward, and I know that it was the intent that we see that we can make this work before we add other things to it. So with that, Chair, I will turn it over to any questions people might have.
All right, thank you so much. Who has questions? Senator Don Loop.
Thank you very much. So my question was going to be about juveniles. That's exactly what I was going to ask about, because I think the concept is really great for lots of reasons. But I was, wondering if there was a way for us to, I don't know if, because juveniles usually don't own their own car, right? The parent's name is on that. So, but I don't know that you can require the owner, the registrar of the car be there. So I was trying to think through that. I don't know if there was any other ideas that were brought forward, and that would be my question.
At this point, I know that we are discussing it on what they are. I know that there are several members here, I'm going to put them on the spot here, that are have been a part of some working groups, and I know have got together outside of like our bigger working groups, and they might be able to, in their either support, opposition, or neutral, be able to talk about what they've been working on. So I would encourage those individuals to talk about that, and they might be able to answer your question. But I will definitely follow up as we move through what that might look like.
Thank you very much. My concern was just thinking through it as a parent. I mean, some kids don't have that luxury of having a guardian or a parent or what have you. But the flip side is we don't want kids getting tickets and then their parents not knowing so that they can't correct the behavior, if you will. Mm-hmm. So it's a balance there. Thank you.
No, Rochelle Wynn for the record. I appreciate that, and I will definitely keep you in the loop on that.
Other questions from members of the committee? Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Actually, first I want to compliment you for taking on such a giant task. I remember when this was a kind of a new issue and it sounded so simple. We're going to take it from criminal to traffic tickets, criminal to civil, and hey, just get it done, right? As your amendment list is only 2 months into it now, I can see. The question I've got on your third bullet point, and you may have already covered it because I didn't understand the concept of it going to collections automatically, but you said it says even after imposition of the order for failure to respond to the citation. Don't you want some level of, to have some assurance of attempts at compliance? You want to penalize people that, basically deliberately ignore the warrants or the tickets or whatever. Is there something in the system now that makes sure that if Ira Hansen deliberately ignores his traffic citation and I don't show up in court or whatever I'm supposed to do, that there isn't some level of penalty to ensure that to try to prevent people from just ignoring them? Because the way that reads now, it's almost like I'll ignore it, but then I can still come back after they've already issued an order for whatever, my arrest or whatever at that point they do, and then come back and say, well, I want to do community service now, with no additional penalty for not having, you're ignoring your warrant or whatever they call it nowadays. I don't even know. But I'm sorry. I'm rambling. My apologies.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I'll definitely look into it further. I'm not sure exactly what it is. There may be, again, if someone can answer that question that comes up here to the podium, that would be great. But I think what this is, I mean, the penalty is if you do not pay and it goes into collections. And I had talked to a little bit about like setting the default as well. So in addition to going to collections, there are some statutory there's statutory language within that bill initially that allowed the courts to put in like collection fees and other things, although sometimes that's a whole other issue. Some of them are pretty high, and some of them are pretty reasonable. But they do have that ability right now without a lot of limitations. So there are some additional, I guess, monetary concerns that are there.
It's the
But-
days of where if you didn't show up, they put out a warrant for your arrest. That's gone with this whole system, correct? Or is that still?
It is with the enumerated charges in here. Again, it doesn't include reckless driving. It doesn't include careless driving. In fact, there was a very long list of things that we did not include at the time, I'll be honest with you, unintentionally. Things like, there's still certain types of broken taillights that are still criminal citations. So there are, there's a list. Like we have a whole list, and I can provide that list to you because I'm sure if this goes through again, I'll be back in 2025 trying to add some additional charges. But there's a laundry list of those. So it does include. There is no warrants that would be issued for these things that were included in 116, but that's not an inclusive list of all traffic.
Well, even your ability to try to explain this helps explain why nobody wanted to touch this for so many years. So I salute you for your courage to jump into this, and I suspect you'll be back numerous times, at least through the 2025 session.
I
assuming we
imagine
supply-
it's as long as my legislative career and the voters
Yeah.
see to vote me in, I will be back here with this bill.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other questions? Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to applaud you, Senator, for this is a yeoman's task. I can tell you spent hours and hours on it, and I'm in complete support in a lot of things that you're trying to do here. Of course, especially the prosecutorial immunity for people that are doing civil cases. That's a no-brainer. The online system for dispute resolution, I think, is very innovative, and I encourage it as much as we can. Does our software systems, do you think they would allow for that? With our capabilities, I know that we have some primitive capabilities here in Nevada, which I'm discovering, but I want to encourage that we find a solution to this, because I think it's great, especially with millennials that are, doing everything on their phones, doing everything on their computers, and for them to be able to sign up for community service, sign up for traffic school without having to go into a court and take time off work or take off time school. It's very innovative, and I applaud you for it. I hope that we have the capacity to do that.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. Not really, but we are getting there. I think adding the uniform criminal citation might be a step in that direction. Right now, it is a painstaking task where they have to enter every single jurisdiction's citation requirements into Bravos separately. And having a little bit of uniformity will allow the individual courts that are not a part of a unified court system here in our state to have that autonomy, but also allow for, it would just make it more efficient. So I'm hopeful that we will get to that point, because I think with some minimal investment, and I hated to use the word mandate in there, but in talking with the group, they were like, we think we want it to be mandated, because if we don't mandate it, no one will do it. And so if we put minimal funds there, I think it will help all of our courts come to that. And you can even see, in the last, Senator Stone, you may not know this, but I was the 5th person to bring this bill, probably because I don't know, it's crazy. But it had, a lot of it had to do with implementation. So I think we are taking the steps that we need to, and you'll probably see some changes in here that also help our courts be able to implement this more smoothly.
Other questions? Okay, I have a couple of questions as well. And there were a couple of things I expected to see that I don't see here. And the first one has to do with the prosecutorial involvement in the civil citations. And I see that suggesting that we provide them with some prosecutorial immunity, but what is the plan to address jurisdictions where the district attorney is simply refusing to engage in this process and there is nobody to bring the citation forward and bring someone into court to answer for their traffic citation?
That is something, Rochelle Wynn for the record. Chair, I know that you have had the opportunity to be thrown into this and are now our resident expert on traffic matters. So I know that you have firsthand experience on this. That is not something that actually has been brought to our attention in either by the courts of limited jurisdiction, which is where all these traffic tickets. It is not something that has been brought up, whether or not we need to include any kind of language in statute. I'm obviously open to it if there is like a scenario where people are just not prosecuting civil or criminal citations. And I know that there are jurisdictions around the state that are, I think there was an article in one of the papers in Southern Nevada that indicated that one of the courts was dismissing, and this was pre-implementation of this rule, like 80% of like traffic citations. And so I do see that as being a real problem, and I'm open to any of that language if we need to have that in there. But it has not been brought to my attention by any of the courts.
Okay. Is my understanding that in some jurisdictions, the courts are taking over that prosecutorial function of sending out the citations and setting court dates and processing the responses from cited people who are saying either, I agree to pay this citation, I don't want to pay this citation, I am contesting this citation. And, that's a broader policy discussion about whether we think that courts can and should perform those functions. But I think it is important that somebody be responsible for ensuring that if we're going to keep these laws on the books, that we have a way to enforce them. And the other thing that I was expecting to see in here was something to address the civil hearings, because the statute still allows somebody to contest the civil citation, and a hearing is supposed to be set where that person goes in front of somebody, presumably a judge, but possibly a traffic hearing officer or a magistrate, to essentially, make their case. I wasn't speeding, the light wasn't red, that stop sign wasn't visible. And it's my understanding that, I don't know, again, I invite our partners here to weigh in. I don't know of any jurisdictions that have actually held one of those hearings yet. And I'm wondering if the statute currently has everything that it needs in order to allow for that hearing to take place.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I did reach out to see if anyone has done that. Hindsight is always 2020. I probably should have had this implemented in 2022 to see what happened, so I could come to this body in 2023 and say, this is really what needs to be fixed. I will reach out to them to find out whether or not they anticipate any problems. It had been brought to the attention, my attention, that there were some concerns about having to post maybe excessive bonds in order, I don't know if it's called a bond or it's a bond, I think, in order to request that civil infraction like hearing. So I will follow up with the chair in this committee with anything that I find out about what that trial, contesting process will look like and whether or not they anticipate there are going to be any issues.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I also want to echo my colleagues' sentiments that I know you have put a tremendous amount of work into this bill, as well as AB 116. I know that we've discussed it many times, since before AB 116 was introduced, and the work continues. And so we appreciate your commitment to continuing to ensure that we build a statute that works for everybody in Nevada and accomplishes our goal to make traffic citations civil infractions, which they should be, and not criminal offenses. And I don't have any further questions. I don't see any further questions from members of the committee, so I will open up the floor for testimony. It seems building construction has come to the Judiciary Committee. And, and all right, anybody brave enough to come to the front to give testimony in support may do so now in Carson City or Las Vegas. Let's start in Las Vegas. I see Mr. Skifalakwa up there. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel, members of the committee. My name is Mark Skifalakwa, Schifalacqua. I'm the head of the criminal division for the Henderson City Attorney's Office. We did work with Senator Wynn on offering a couple amendments. Both were in the conceptual amendment that is before you. We are one of the jurisdictions that is continuing to handle criminal as well as civil traffic cases in our municipal court. So our prosecutors are still appearing, subpoenaing those cases that do go to contested hearings. Very appreciative of Senator Wynn's ability to work with us, and as long as those two conceptual amendments are included, we are supportive of SB 104. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else coming to the table in Las Vegas, so we will come back to Carson City. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We are here today in support of SB 104. The bills that were passed last session with bipartisan support were critical, and we supported them then. This cleanup bill is necessary to ensure that the legislative intent is fully realized for those bills. Passing SB 104 will continue to ensure that Nevadans can drive legally, which is a critical way to ensure that the citizens of this great state are able to contribute to their families, communities, and ultimately their state. Please pass this common sense legislation, and thank you to Senator Wynn for continuing her work on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, the committee. My name is Erica Roth, Ericaroth, and I'm with the Washoe County Public Defender's Office, here to testify in support of SB 104. I just want to thank the work of Senator Nguyen and all of our partners as we worked through some of these issues. We are fully in support of the bill at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. John Puro from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. We're also in support of the measure, and we thank Senator Nguyen for working hard on this issue and getting it over the hill last session and then continuing to work on the issues that come up.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel and committee members. My name is Nick Shepak, Shepack. I am the State Deputy Director of the Fines and Fees Justice Center. I believe you may also be hearing from our State Director over the phone. But I wanted to just add a big thank you to Senator Wynn for all of her hard work on this. We are dedicated as an organization to helping make sure that this works for everyone, and we have enjoyed the last year and a half of thinking about this every day. Thank you very much.
Tanya Brown, spelled Tonja, Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent. We echo the comments previously made by the other individuals here. Thank you again, Senator Wynn, for the hard work that you have done. I'll find it interesting to find out how the last bullet point in the clarification of the juvenile civil judgments is going to come out, because I'm going to be having my grandchildren are almost getting to that age, so I'd like to know too. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel, members of the committee. My name is John Jones. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. We are also in support of the proposed conceptual amendments. I do want to thank Senator Wynn for putting all of this together. And I also would like to address the question posed by you, Chair Scheibel, with respect to prosecutors opting out. This was something that we did look into last session, and I know other jurisdictions who have passed civil structures also have the ability for prosecutors to opt out. So we can look to other states for potential solutions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chris Reese, RIES, representing the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'd just like to echo my colleagues that we support this conceptually and look very much forward to working with Senator Wynn on this legislation. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Jason Walker, Washoe County Sheriff's Office. me too in support of SB 104. Looking forward to further conversation.
All right. I don't see anybody else coming down to the table to give support testimony in Carson City, so we will go to the phones, please.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. If you would like to offer testimony in support of SB 104, please press star 9 now, excuse me, to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. This is Jim Hoffman, representing Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. We are in support of the bill for the reasons identified by the other supporters. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the phone line to testify in support?
Yes, Chair, one moment. Caller with the last three digits 533, you are unmuted and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and committee members. This is Lisa Mosley Sales, State Director for the Fines and Fees Justice Center, calling in support of this bill. I echo the sentiments of those testifying in support prior to me, and also would like to solidify our commitment to working with Senator Wynn, other stakeholders on this bill, and continuing our support for making sure that this bill passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. There are no other callers to offer testimony in support of SB 104 at this time.
All right, then. We will move to opposition testimony, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. And I don't see anybody coming to the table, so I'll go quickly to the phone lines. Is there anybody to give opposition testimony?
Thank you, Chair. There are no, excuse me, there are no other callers to offer opposition testimony at this time.
All right, we will move to neutral testimony. Anybody wishing to give neutral testimony, please make your way to the front here in Carson City or in Las Vegas, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, and I represent Washoe County as their government affairs liaison. Sort of in the forgive me, sort of the rules about when you do and don't come up if there's proposed amendments. We are supportive of these conceptual amendments. We very much appreciate being included in the working group, particularly for our justice courts. Bullet point number 4 on the list of proposed amendments is quite important, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions today or offline that the committee might have about that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and members of the committee. My name is Jeff Rogan, R-O-G-A-N. I'm with Clark County. I also want to thank Senator Wynn for taking on this burden. We've had some procedural difficulties in our justice courts relating to the implementation of AB 116, and a lot of what we see in the conceptual amendment will go a long way towards perhaps fixing some of those procedural and operational issues that we're encountering. I did want to just take a moment to address Senator Dondero Loop's question about juveniles. We are working on that. Currently, if a juvenile is the tortfeasor in a civil case, the case is brought against the parent on behalf of the child, and it's ultimately the parent that's responsible for the fines and fees or any kind of civil judgment that comes forth. We're looking in to see whether that's an option rather than routing these through juvenile court, but these are discussions that are still ongoing, and I'd be happy to include you on those questions. Thank you very much.
All right, I don't see anybody else to give in-person neutral testimony, so we'll go to the phones for neutral testimony on SB 104.
Thank you, Chair. There are no callers to offer neutral testimony on SB 104 at this time.
All right, then that brings us to the conclusion of our hearing on SB 104, unless the sponsor would like she would not like to make any concluding remarks. Who knows what kinds of construction will start if she does. So I will close the hearing on SB 104 today, and that brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. If there is anybody wishing to give public comment in person in Las Vegas or Carson City, please come on up to the table now. Not seeing anybody, we will go right to the phones for public comment.
Thank you, Chair. The public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers to offer public comment at this time.
All right, then that brings us to the end of a quick meeting. We will be back here again, same time, same place tomorrow. And until then, we are adjourned.